I want to welcome you to Grit for Life Director's Workshop. We're on week 2. We have been talking about you being the director of your life. For those who are actually doing the workshop in real time, I know that many of you have been finding this workshop rewarding but also difficult. I understand that when you start really digging in and seeing that maybe you're not in control of the director's chair of your life as much as you thought, that can be very impactful. That can hit you in a way that you were not expecting. But I challenge you not to give up. Because see, if you've been doing this workshop, you've already taken over the director's chair again. If you were to get up and give that director's chair back over to everything that you're trying to fight through right now, the next time you try to get in the director's chair, it's going to be harder. In fact, you may never even be able to get in it again. This is your opportunity. This is your moment here and now to direct the masterpiece that was meant to be your life's movie. We've talked about a slew of different things. We've talked about the screenplay. We've talked about you storyboarding. We've talked about finding the right location and then even auditioning for the supporting cast. Today I want to talk about the soundtrack to your life. What is a good movie without good sound? Movies that we can think of, that we have watched, replay over and over in our heads just with the songs that come over the radio or over our iHeartRadio or the Google Play or whatever it is, iTunes, whatever it is we're listening to. The moment that song from that movie that made an impact on your life plays, we are immediately taken back to that moment, that big screen, whether it be the Titanic, whether it be the theme song to Star Wars, or when Darth Vader walks in and you hear that Imperial March. The Lord of the Rings soundtrack that takes you and rushes you from where you're at back into Middle Earth and fighting Sauron. The Greatest Showman. That soundtrack rises within you to let you know that you are you. This is me and it's all I'm going to be, and I am great with who I am. A soundtrack can make or break a movie. You can have the greatest actors, the best storyboard, the best screenplay, the most amazing, beautiful location. But if you're not paired up with the right soundtrack, it just doesn't have it. So how do we ensure that we have the right soundtrack to our lives? How do we determine that soundtrack to our lives? When getting ready for this workshop and I came to this focus, I asked myself, what is the soundtrack to my life? And I started thinking about that. And when I start thinking about the soundtrack to my life, I think about the things that draw me back to the good times and the bad times. I also am taken back to the voices that have torn me up and spit me out. And I start realizing that maybe I don't like the soundtrack to my life. I want my movie of my life to be different. How can I make it different? With the soundtrack. What I want you to understand is this, that all movies, they're not really a good movie unless you have someone that you can believe in as that main character that is driving you forward through the storyline. That main character has to come up against something that is going to help us understand them more, that is going to form them in front of us. As they do that, the soundtrack begins to beat and they begin to see danger, or they begin to fight a struggle, or maybe they're heartbroken, and that soundtrack dives down into that emotional rendition of music that takes our heart and just crushes us and makes us want to reach into the screen and say, it's going to be okay, because I'm not going to stop watching this movie. At the end, it'll be okay. You need to understand that the soundtrack to your life is the same. What we do so many times is we try to take away the stuff that was bad in our lives. And in essence, we do need to, but not to erase it from the movie. We don't need to erase that soundtrack aspect to the movie, because that's what made us. But so many times we get stuck. We come to that point in our life where that we're so used to being put down and crushed that sad melodic tune of that portion of our soundtrack somehow gets put on repeat. Day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, we waste our time still listening to the same sad song. Or maybe it's the song of suspense and fear because we've allowed others or life circumstances to scare us and put us into that constant state of fear. And so that soundtrack, that foreboding soundtrack of our life, is stuck on a repeat. It's as if the movie freezes and all we can do is continue to watch this one scene over and over, and that music pumps into our head and gets us hyped up or takes us to the lowest of lows. And we don't realize that it gets better if we just continue forward. How do we do that? I want to look at this at two different aspects. I want to look at it at a metaphoric aspect. At the same time, I want you to take a look at the reality of a true soundtrack to your life. And I want to talk about that first. I want you, for your soul portion of this, and if you're just watching the YouTube, on the workshops, we do mind, body, and soul portions. The soul portion is usually some type of homework or journaling or something. This is what I want you to do. In your journal, I want you to write out songs that you consider the soundtrack right now, without changing anything. I want you to think of songs that you would make the soundtrack to your life. This can be very eye-opening. Because what you can start seeing is it can be, and I want to forewarn you, it can be hard because it can take you back to some things. But I want you to remember that as you go back to those moments that these songs remind you of, I want you to remember you're not there. That happened. You can still change the end of the movie. But I want you to write out a list of what you consider would be the songs of your life, the soundtrack of your life, the songs that are monumental. I will tell you right now, one of mine is the song Sound of Silence. This is a song that reverberates into the soundtrack of my mind. Whether it's the original Simon and Garfunkel or whether it's Disturbed's version or someone else's version, Mick Blankenship's version. This song was a song that when I was being molested as a boy was played quite a bit. And as a young boy, as an 8-year-old, I didn't understand the words to it. I didn't understand the meaning of it, I guess I should say. But I remember as a young 8-year-old boy standing in front of the mirror in a dark bathroom. Only the light from underneath the door shining to give myself enough reflection that I could see myself. And as an 8-year-old boy, I would sit there and say, "Hello, darkness, my old friend." And I would say over and over the song, The Sound of Silence. "Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk to you again." And this became a soundtrack to a very hard period of my life. For me, as an 8-year-old boy, what this meant was my life was so dark. The darkness is where I hid from the pain of my life. Darkness was what was enveloping my soul, and it was becoming my friend. Today I can listen to it now and know where I stand today. It's still part of the soundtrack, but it's not on repeat. So what I want you to do is I want you to write it out, because what you do is when you get done writing out, then I want you to go back and start looking. I promise you, if you do this and put heart to it, you'll begin to see a picture. You'll begin to discover more of who you are. But the movie's not done yet. So now wherever you ended, it could just be that you brought the songs and the soundtrack of your life up to today. And you get a picture of where you are, but that's where you are, not where you're headed. Now I want you to follow that up with songs that will encourage you to go along with your screenplay and your storyboarding of what your future holds. It may mean you're going to have to check different genres of music out. I challenge you to do that. Write in. If you want to see, maybe it's you're dreaming of, you just want something, you want more hope, then type into Google, songs of hope. Listen to them. See what they sound like. Maybe one will resonate with you. And start building a new soundtrack to your life. Now, metaphorically, that's the realistic part that I want you to do, and I want you to think about, because I promise you it will be hard, but it will be worth it. And then you get to direct the rest of the movie. You get to instill the rest of the soundtrack. Because our life, a good movie isn't just straight up or straight down. It has ups and downs. Metaphorically, a lot of times what we do is the soundtrack to our life actually becomes the pain, the words. When I'm even sitting here talking to you, I can think of the words that have been said to me in anger. The words of hatred, the words of hurt, the words of rejection. I also hear my own voice. I hear my own voice in that soundtrack as I spew out hatred, as I spew out anger. To others and to myself. Sometimes the soundtrack of your life will sound like your voice. You telling you how you failed. You telling you how you're not good enough. Your voice singing your song of anger and fear. Your voice singing your song of pain and rejection. Your voice singing no anthem, really. That's okay, because that was then. That's the beginning of the movie. Maybe even the middle of the movie. Today, there's one more thing I want you to do. This is going to be hard. For those who know Grit for Life and those who have done our workshops before, you've done this before. And you know how hard it is. But it is vital for you to reset the soundtrack, that internal soundtrack of your heart, your mind, your body, your soul. And it starts with forgiving. It starts with dubbing over. What I want you to do, I want you, along with writing out the songs, and this journaling today, this soul portion is going to be one of the most lengthiest ones we have done, but it is one of the most vital. What I want you to do, along with writing out the songs, like I said before, the other last part of the journaling is this. I want you to write a forgiveness letter. Forgiveness is something very important and is so vital, and it is something that is so hard. And it's something misunderstood, because so many times we think that if we forgive someone else, that means they get to come back into our life. Or they're not held accountable for what they did. No, that's not true. It's not true at all. It means you're letting go. It gives you the opportunity to move forward. It gives you the opportunity to grow. It gives you the opportunity to reorchestrate and compose the new back half of the soundtrack of your life. So what I want you to do is I want you to forgive. I want you to write down the people that you need to forgive. Doesn't necessarily mean you need to talk to them. If you can, by all means. But if it is something that is so personal, or puts yourself in a dangerous position, or puts yourself in a position of toxicity that you don't need to be in, then just write it down. I want you to write it out and say, I forgive you. And I'm letting you go. I'm cutting this song out of my soundtrack. No longer will I continue to play it on repeat. If you do write it out and you're unable to talk to that person, then what I want you to do is take that, put it somewhere safely that you will not catch anything else on fire, and I want you to burn it. And as you burn it, and it goes up in flames, let it go. Then there's one more person you need to forgive. You're going to look in the mirror. I want you to Google soundtrack instrumental music. As you do this, I want you to have it playing on YouTube. Not Google it, YouTube it. Soundtrack instrumental music, and find something that's epic. Soundtrack instrumental. I want you to put it on. And I want you to go and look into a mirror. I want you to study the words that are etched upon your face of the soundtrack of your life. I want you to smile. And I want you to look into your eyes. And then I want you to say, I forgive you. I forgive you for the harsh words that you have spoken. I forgive you for the mistakes that you have made, the wrong notes that you've played in the soundtrack. I forgive you for the times that you thought you weren't worth it. I forgive you. And that is the song title to my new soundtrack song, is Forgiveness. Because today I let go. Today I no longer will be held back from the past songs in the soundtrack. I am going to compose a new soundtrack to my life. You can. You will. You must. I know it is hard, and I know it is difficult, and I know that I have, especially for those who are actually doing the workshop in live form, I have watched your post in the workshop, and I know that this honestly has been harder than I thought it would even be. When I put these workshops together, I don't form them in a manner of saying, well, is it going to be easy or hard? I form it with the message that I know that needs to be said. But you have really taken this and ran with it. You have ran with it. Some of you want to give up. Don't. Listen to the epic drumbeat of your heart. You're alive. You're powerful. The music is rising in your life. The pinnacle of your story is just getting reached. The warrior is winning in battle. And if you stop this now, you will never be able to see what you were meant to be as the director of your life. My friend, your response, your responsibility. Go grit it.